2,000 years ago, across the ancient Near East, a horrible plague spread throughout the Jewish community. It was indiscriminate in its ruthlessness, and it was unprecedentedly contagious. It destroyed everything. And when it finally let up, the rabbis came together and they gave it a name. They called it the plague of Sinah, the plague of hate. It was, and it continues to be, the most destructive moment in Jewish history, because it not only claimed so many lives, but because it nearly killed Judaism and the Jewish people in our entirety. This was the lead up to the Roman destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, of the Second Temple. The Romans considered this backwater province of their empire to be a political and geographical thorn in their side. But they were fascinated, because as much as they hated the Jews, there was someone who hated us even more. Us. As cruel as the Romans were, they couldn't hold a candle to the hate that we dished out on one another. Political differences, economic differences, cultural differences, and differences in religious practice and interpretation. These are the classic excuses that we are given from historians and from textual scholars as to how and why everything broke. And they are all factors, for sure. There's no doubt about that. But the truth is that for our ancestors, their world changed quickly and dramatically, and instead of navigating that change together, they let it tear them apart. And now we can get into the history of all of this another time, but this morning I want to focus on what happened after, because that is what needs to speak to us today. The culmination of this strife and division was the destruction of the Second Temple and the beginning of Galut, the beginning of the Exodus, the beginning of the creation of a Jewish diaspora through forced expulsion. But in the wake of that devastation, our rabbis did something truly remarkable and commendable. They looked at the ruins there at their feet, and rather than pointing fingers, they said, "We did this. We did this. We might not have actually torn down these walls or set this city on fire, but our plague, our hate, is what prevented us from stopping this. Our hate has scattered us to the nations." And everything Jewish from that moment on, everything, thoughtfully and intentionally, demanded confrontation with that powerful moment of accountability and communal self-awareness. And that, my friends, has changed us positively forever. The Talmud is a legal response to hate. Midrash is a theological narrative response to hate. Jewish mysticism, Musar, ethics, and thought are all responses to hate. And all of it is incredible because the rabbis were singularly focused not on preventing a disaster that already took place, but warning the generations to come so that such a tragedy would never happen again. They hoped that we would heed their warnings and open our hearts and our minds to some pretty radical ideas. And that is what I want to focus on this morning, because we owe it to ourselves to wrestle with it. Like we spoke about last week and we spoke about a little bit this morning, we are in the 3 weeks, the annual commemoration of that plague that forever changed our world. During these days, Jewish tradition asks us to limit our joy, to temper our consuming, our spending, our taking. We avoid instrumental music, meat, wine, simchas, and celebrations, not as a form of punishment, but as an invitation and opportunity to focus on a powerful, personal, and communal question. Are you building your temple, or are you standing by as it falls apart? And it's not an easy question to answer, because we aren't always as aware as we might think, as we might hope. We don't always see the ways that we are exposed to the plague of hate, because we often label and categorize our anger, our judgment, our fears. And this is exactly what our sages warn us against. So heads up, here comes one of those radical ideas. There is a ma'amar, there is a essay or text in Lubavitch Hasidut called Heichaltzu. And if you're wondering where you've heard that word before, it comes from this parasha, from Parashat Matot, which is always read during the 3 weeks. And in the biblical text, this obscure Hebrew word means arm yourselves, Heichaltzu, in a militaristic way, because this parasha is about preparing for war with Midian and with the Midianites. But in the ma'amar, in this essay, this word means something completely different. It still means to arm yourself, and it is still referring to a war against Midian. But to the Alter Rebbe and to those who added their commentary over the years, this is a different kind of Midian. This Midian represents the ego, the place of self-importance, of viewing the world solely from the I. And the message is powerful. It's controversial, but it's powerful. To arm ourselves, the Ma'amar explains, to go to war with the ego requires two main things. One, to eliminate hate from our hearts, and two, to broaden our understanding of hate so that we know that all hate is sinat chinam, that all hate is baseless. And now that requires some unpacking, because remember, our rabbis attributed the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, the destruction of the Second Temple, to individual and communal responsibility of sinat chinam, of baseless hatred of one Jew against another. Baseless here, meaning that all of those political, cultural, and spiritual divisions were ultimately insignificant when it came to the larger and authentic purpose of Jewish existence, which is love of God and love of one another. Now that is radical in its own right. It is radical in its own right to say that our theological and political differences are meaningless in the ultimate scheme of things. But the Heichaltzu goes even further, saying that sinat chinam, baseless hatred, is redundant, that all hate is baseless. Because the only way that we can hate is when we are focused not on the love of God and the love of one another, but on ourselves. The ways we feel wronged and slighted, the ways we feel like we are right and just and better and superior, where we feel validated in our I-ness and lose sight of what really matters, our we-ness. That's a bit esoteric, so let's get away from the philosophy and focus on what that means to us right here and right now. It means that the rabbis themselves are already pretty radical in telling us that our mandate of Ahavat Yisrael, to love all Jews without exceptions, means that in our day and age, the way to do that is to love not just our fellow Jews of the conservative movement, but to love our Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox brothers and sisters, to love our Reform and Renewal and Reconstructionist brothers and sisters, our agnostic brothers and sisters, our atheist brothers and sisters, our liberal brothers and sisters, our conservative brothers and sisters. We all on the same page so far? It's gonna get harder. To love those who are far-right extremists, and to love those who are democratic socialists, to love the Jews who dream of a greater Israel, and to love the Jews who are opposed to Israel's very existence. Got a little harder, didn't it? It's going to get harder. Because that was just the rabbis of the Talmud. The Ma'amar, Heichaltzu, goes even further and says, love every single Jew no matter what. Beyond political or philosophical differences, beyond what we believe to be moral and right and just, and to love even on a micro level if you have been personally wrong or hurt by individual or group, not because they deserve your love, but because you deserve your love. But because what is keeping you from loving and keeping you from the beautiful and meaningful closeness of the divine is the force of Midian, of ego, of a focus on the self. And if we can arm ourselves and conquer that ego, then we will understand that all sina is chinam, that all hate is baseless. Because if it is not working towards us coming together or drawing closer to God, then it doesn't actually matter. That is radical. That is really radical. But my goodness, is it compelling. Because as we let ourselves absorb the historical significance of these 3 weeks, it's all kind of pointless if it doesn't spark some positive change within us. So let me ask you the question that these 3 weeks are asking. And don't worry, I'm asking myself as well. Are you building your temple, or are you standing by as it falls apart? Are you allowing yourselves to live with the freedom and the joy of love, to draw as close as possible to the divine, or are you letting the hate of this world pull you into the plague? I know for me, the answer to that question is disproportionately on the side I don't want it to be a lot of the time. I get wrapped up in the anger and the sadness and the fear of it all, and I think all of us do. But I so badly want, and I am so working hard to change that percentage, to make that go down so that I can be closer. Because that's what it's all about. And just as an addendum here, and this is an important addendum, the rabbis, even the Alter Rebbe of the Ma'amar, didn't say we all had to agree. Chas v'chalila. That's not what this is about. Nor do we have to legitimize or validate. In fact, we shouldn't. This isn't about moral or spiritual relativism. It's about love. And it's about remembering when our world was destroyed, when our very peoplehood came to the brink of destruction, and to say, we refuse to let that happen again. This is the hardest part of our calendar. These 3 weeks are the hardest part of our calendar. It's harder than prepping for Pesach. I know it doesn't feel like that when we're prepping for Pesach, but it's harder than prepping for Pesach. And it is even harder than the spiritual work of the days of awe. But these days are the ones that are key to our survival. These are the days that show us what matters. The days that show us what's at stake. 2,000 years ago, we almost lost it all because we let hate in. 2,000 years later, Jews around the world lift their voices in prayer, in song, in joy, and in hope on Shabbat, not because we all share the same thoughts and opinions. Absolutely not. But because our tradition forced itself to respond to that moment with accountability and with courage. So let us follow the model of their bravery. And during these 3 weeks and beyond, let's disagree with passion and conviction, and simultaneously, without any kind of paradox, let us choose love. Let us choose to love one another more and more and more, so that we can feel the freedom of what matters most. that we choose life, that we sanctify it with love. Shabbat shalom.